Hello, so I'm Ellie. I'm the Communications Officer at Diversity and Ability. I'm disabled and neurodiverse, and I'm here with Atif, our co-founder and CEO, to discuss how we feel about neurodiversity. So Atif, firstly, if you could tell me what the word neurodiversity means to you and how you define it.
Sure. Hello, everybody, and thank you for listening to this and taking such enthusiasm for it. Neurodiversity to me means really just that, the diversity of how we think and feel in the world, and the strengths that come with that, and of course, some of the very clear challenges. So it's a balance of skills and wonder and strength and possibilities, but it's also a balance that's often framed in things that are hard for people to participate in. So what we are looking for is the understanding that we're all neurodiverse, all of us, but we're not all marginalized because of it. And when we are, that's what we've got to work on. When we are, those are the barriers we've got to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know a lot of people are really keen to observe neurodiversity more as a dichotomy. So more as a kind of two types of people, the neurodivergent and the neurotypical. I know what you've said is we're all neurodiverse. So why would you advocate for neurodiversity as a spectrum rather than that kind of black and white neurodivergence versus neurotypicality?
Thanks, Ellie. I think it's a great question. Largely because we're made up of so many experiences. Where I struggle with the idea of a single narrative, I suppose, to say, yeah, we're framed because of neurodivergency. And therefore we're framed when we're not coming under a neurodivergent label. Then we hear the more common sort of terminologies around a person being neurotypical versus a person who is neurodivergent. I think the neurotypicality is an odd one for me because it says nothing about someone's life, how they've grown up, the social economics of their life, their culture, what they've accessed, what they've not been able to access, trauma, social conditioning. It says nothing about those things, and yet we can put a label to say they don't think or feel like me. And the only way they can think and feel like me is if they get the diagnosis that I've got, which is about me. And then I think, well, surely isn't that just sleepwalking? Maybe with good intentions, and maybe because of a certain situation and a culture of childhood trauma. But isn't that just sleepwalking into a medicalized model and a medicalized approach to say, I am this diagnosis, therefore I have this divergency. Whereas when I look at neurodiversity, it comes with such wonder, such possibilities. As I said, we've inherited a world full of imbalances, full of wrongdoings, full of powerlessness in so many cases, so much stigma and shame. So very few of us really get to be excited about the way we learn. And sometimes we do need to go for a diagnosis just to be able to find out what that even means. But many of us don't get to find out. So are we saying that those who haven't not yet accessed a diagnosis are not neurodivergent or not neurodiverse? That makes no sense at all. There is a class-based discussion around those who can access a diagnosis and those who can't. In fact, I know that had I not gone to university, I perhaps would never have done. And I certainly came from a culture, and I do, and I come from a community that doesn't talk about these things, despite having gone to university. In my case, I had to create DNA and co-create DNA to be the company that I needed when I was younger. But I certainly wouldn't talk like this in any other organization I've ever worked in. Sadly, there is a lot of trauma here. And with that trauma comes a reaction and the need to fit in and belong and to sense our own sense of safety. And we find that tribalism there. But I think, as I said, people are much more interesting than just how they perform on a diagnosis. Now, I'm not anti-diagnosis, I make that really clear. Yeah. I just wonder sometimes how much power they carry and how much power we are desperate to find, how much affirmation we need. And I myself, I was there. The amount of affirmation I got in my life upon getting a diagnosis was incredible because so many doors were closed to me, so many emotional barriers internally to me were righteous and real, and they're still real today, every one of them. But getting a diagnosis was perhaps one of the most healing things I'd ever experienced. But at the same time, we're so much more than how we perform on a set of tests. We're so much more interesting. And if we don't have an intersectional perspective on neurodiversity, then we may not have a relevant one. And we need to ask ourselves that question deeply, to know how do we need to make sure that more people are participating in this, not because they're neurodivergent, but because they deserve to be welcomed and enjoy this and not be fixed or healed, but just welcomed on the terms in which they come and the richness of what we all deserve and gain from when that welcome is felt.
I think it's an exciting thought. We are moving towards that, and I think that fills me with hope and excitement for the future, where there is a real global understanding of diversity, and we move away from seeing difference as a deficit and towards a celebration. So it's really exciting to be able to talk about that. And what better time to celebrate that than in Neurodiversity Celebration Week.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ellie. And thank you, just not just all those in the DNA team that makes this kind of work possible and these approaches possible. We know they're pioneering, but we also know that so many of us have lived with labels for so long, and many of us are afraid to even begin to talk about that. So I hope that we get to model things that allow you to feel that this celebration of this week can be part of yours, that you're unmasking more often where you can. And above all, recognizing that we don't need fixing, that you don't need fixing. It's just really about working out that the world is so much more richer because of the diversity of thought. It changes the world every day. And perhaps maybe it's the only thing that ever truly does. But thank you for listening, all of you.
Thank you. Thanks, Atif.